Hey, what's up, everybody? On this week's episode of Movie Time, we are big fans of Cate Blanchette, and now both of us has finally had a chance to watch the latest movie, Tar. We're so excited to talk about that. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite snack. It's time for Movie Time, coming at you right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's another week, and that means it's a brand new episode of Movie Time. You got the movie boys in the house. Rene, LOWKEY GEEK here with my boy, Blake the Wolf. What's going on, dude?
Yo, Rene, how's it going? It's rainy outside right now, but I
Yeah,
am excited to stay indoors with you and do what we do best, talk about the new movies we've seen.
yeah, no, for sure. As I mentioned in the top of this video, we are going to be talking about Tar this week. Blake finally had a chance to watch it. I saw it previously during New York Film Festival, which is still going on.
Jealous.
And I have a couple more screenings to go to before it closes out.
Show
But
off.
well, I do what I do. But you could see some of the coverage there on the channel right now. I think recently I posted a little Q&A session with Tilda Swinton for her new upcoming A24 movie, The Eternal Daughter. So that was fun to watch and all that. But yeah, definitely check it out on the channel there. Before we go into things that we normally talk about for this episode, if you are brand new to this channel and if you're coming across us for the very first time, welcome. Movie Time is a weekly podcast where two knuckleheads bullshit about movies every week. So if you like what you see and you want to see more, don't forget, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell for all the YouTube greatness. If you want an audio version of this podcast, you could find it on your podcast platform of choice. Just type in LOWKEY GEEK there, and you could find this episode along with many others to download for your audio listening satisfaction. And if you are already listening through audio formats, thank you. We appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a good rating if it prompts you to. But before we get into Tar that we're going to be talking about this week, one thing I wanted to mention to all of you guys and something interesting for us to talk about. Blake and I, we are huge basketball fans. We have in the past attended some basketball games here in New York, which means we've watched the Knicks either lose or lose or lose. I don't think we've ever been to a game where they won, right?
One time they lost, actually. I don't know if you mentioned that one, but
Oh,
it's
right,
that's
right,
about all of
yeah,
them. Yeah. hmm
yeah, okay. So, but we love talking about basketball. You know, we have another mutual friend of ours who we just geek out on basketball whenever we have a chance, especially when the season's around. So this week, HBO has dropped the new documentary called 38 at the Garden, I think it's called, or
Yep.
something. Yeah. But
Yep.
basically,
38 at the Garden.
cool. Basically, it recaps the kind of fairy tale moment of Linsanity here in New York about 10 years ago now. I think this was back in 2012, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
We're looking at
Uh,
2011, 2012 season. Yeah.
yeah, which is insane that it was that long ago. But the one thing that
Linsane. But yeah, please.
Linsane, very
Yes.
Linsane. And Jeremy Lin was definitely ball Lin during
hmm
that time. But
hmm
the cool thing that I found about it, and you know, it's nice watching documentaries like this because it's like a walk down memory lane. You kind of remember how you felt at the time. You maybe sometimes remember where you were when you were watching some of these games. As for me, I was actually there during the night they played the Nets where he came off the bench for the very first time. And because at that
Wow.
time, you know, I've I don't know if I've ever told this story before, but I used to have season tickets to the Knicks. I was very huge into basketball and all that stuff like that, and it was just one of those days where the Knicks were suffering a lot from injuries at that time, so they needed anyone to chip in. And when they called upon this kid to come off the bench, I remember sitting there just saying, "Who the hell is this guy?" I had never even like seen him like practice or anything like that, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Right? I was sitting next to an Asian couple, and the girl next to me said, "Oh, did you know that he went to Harvard?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, I didn't." I think that's
Hmm.
fascinating that we have like I really like a purebred Ivy leaguer on the Knicks right now. And then he just went off. and he started doing layups and all that stuff like that. And the garden started going nuts. I remember so much so that our whole row was going so nuts and insane, as we're rooting on this kid out of nowhere, that the same girl I was talking to, even though her boyfriend is right there, gave me a kiss on the cheek because she was
Oh
just
my
super
gosh.
excited. She was just like super
Got caught up?
excited. Yeah, he got caught
Yes.
up in the
Love it.
moment, and it was like, this is one of our own, you know, playing NBA and killing it right now, right? So it was definitely a magical moment, right? And
Yeah.
again, something that you rarely experience. But the fact that it carried on to the next game, to the next
Hmm.
game, and then the
Hmm.
infamous Lakers
Hmm.
game, right, where he
Hmm.
dropped the 38 points.
Magic.
It was just, yeah, it is. It was just magic. And then I love how they put emphasis on the Toronto game in Toronto, where he
Yep.
basically waved everyone off and it's like, no, I got this, and he hit the game-winning shot. Brilliant, brilliant.
Yep. Beautiful moment.
And yeah, and I remember the rest of the season after that. Now, the one thing they don't go into is what happened after those magical moments where he got injured, and then unfortunately he wasn't able to really come back to the same strength that he showed off during those few games there. And then he eventually got traded from the Knicks because there was a beef between him and Melo, because Melo was like the big spotlight grabber and all that stuff like that, all the behind the scenes stories and everything. But for the rest of the season, it was insane to see a lot of new people going to basketball games who've never been to basketball games before. There was this one time I remember I was sitting at the game, and the whole entire row behind me was a family of 10, and they were all Chinese Americans, and you could tell like all the different generations were sitting there. You had the grandfather, you had the mother, the father, the children, their children, and every time Lin would touch the ball, they would cheer because they just don't know what's going on. They just want him to play, right? Like, oh, Jeremy Lin fouled. He fouled this other guy. Yay! it's like it was just crazy, the atmosphere and how the support for Jeremy Lin was so huge at that time. But Blake, what was your recollection of those moments during
Yeah.
that time, and how did you enjoy the documentary? Because the documentary also goes into the significance of representation, how it meant for the Asian community, especially now that there's so much hate towards the Asian community with all the violence and crimes going on.
Yes, so I don't have as many connections to Linsanity as you do. I will say I was in New York. I just moved there in the prior year, and it was one of those moments. Everybody was talking about it. You literally would get on an elevator, not know anyone, and people would go, "Did you all see that last night?" Like it was one of those
Yeah.
things so wild and magical. People would be like, "Hey, this is real, right? That's like we gotta talk about this, right?" That was amazing. I am simply a humble basketball fan, and I happen to be the commissioner of a fantasy basketball league. So I think I'm an expert when it comes to saying no. The most this was some of the best cameos we've seen since Hustler, the recent Adam Sandler Netflix movie. That I think was one of my favorite things about it. And I don't have a ton to add, so I'll
Yeah.
briefly say this movie did a good job of adding two things. One, we get deeper, richer backstory on Linsanity because in the moment, it's all anybody was talking about in the elevator.
Yeah.
But this we don't know as much backstory. People go, "Did you know he went to Harvard? Did you know this about his backstory? Did you know that his
Hmm.
parents like that was happening?" But now we have more perspective. Even at the time, he was on the list of Person of the Year. And I remember like reading everything I could and just watching highlights repeatedly, just because it was so unreal. And there are people that I was close with did not care one iota about basketball, and they were like, "Hey, can we watch that Knicks game tonight? Where are you guys watching the Knicks game?" Like it was that
Right.
pervasive. Now, what this got to do was give us a little more context and perspective on what was happening then. Really appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
Plus the what's become a bigger conversation in the last 10 years of representation
Yeah.
and what that means, especially for a community that in the last couple of years has faced so much violence. I feel like they did a really good job because this is only a 38-minute movie.
Yeah.
That's part of why I fully recommend it. Just I like you have a lunch break, put this on your phone.
Hmm.
It's on HBO, right? Um, it was it was very succinct and well done and entertaining. Plus, they hit on a whole nother aspect. So
Mhm.
I thought maybe this is just going to be highlight reels, some interviews about it, some context. I had a whole section on Asian violence, and I thought for a moment, like, okay, this is no longer a Jeremy Lin movie, and then they connect it, and the way they connected it to me was very powerful, very effective. For the I think it's the last thing I'm going to even say on the movie and kind of what I thought about it, because I think you can
Yeah.
tell I was impressed by how well it was done, especially for that length. Um, we're talking for the talking heads, Iman Shumpert, Tyson Chandler, two of the most entertaining and best Knicks for that, and they were very
Oh yeah.
candid. Tyson
Oh
Chandler said a
yeah.
couple things. I was like, I don't know if you should say that, but it does give more perspective. Made it a richer story of what it was like to be in the locker room
Yeah.
from the perspective of an insider, going, who the hell is this kid?
Yeah.
Um, Pablo Torre, one of my favorite podcasters and people who speak about sports. Lisa Ling, Hassan Minaj, and Ronnie Chang. Hassan Minaj and Ronnie Chang, just hands down, two of my favorite comedians. I've gotten to see Ronnie Chang live before.
Mhm.
Really, and because these are all people. There was one other name in there. I think it was Jenny Yang. Where these
Yeah,
are all
another
people who
comedian.
did it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, yes. These are all people who are really good at giving a succinct bite, and it has resonance beyond just like, and then we couldn't believe what happened next. They actually
Yeah.
got to speak from personal experience, what it was like in their home, their community, watching this.
Mhm.
And there was definitely moments where you're laughing or you're just doing the like, oh my gosh, this is so unreal. And I felt transported for a moment. I'm really
Mhm.
glad they got to give person. And then you had a few more talking heads, which were just typical Knicks fans, and that
Oh
is
yeah.
always a pleasure. Those are the dudes who are going viral on TikTok, the bing bong kind of dudes. So
Yep.
always fun to throw that in there. So it was a good combination of political and not in a controversial way. If anyone's pro violence, like you maybe this one's not for you. Get out of
Right.
here.
Yeah, go F
Everybody
off.
else,
Yeah.
like we get some politics, we get some amazing basketball for people who, if you don't care about basketball, you care about this story,
Mhm.
and then you get some very like this the synthesis of those two things from a very entertaining perspective, and it's all those little talking heads and just quick bits. I don't have much patience for the like, all right, now we're going to interview a dude for 4 minutes and he's going to tell you the whole backstory. No, it's just like a boom, 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 38 minutes in and out, and really well done at capturing that fantastic moment of basketball history and keeping the perspective the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, it's one and we get a lot of this with sports as well, where we get like those Cinderella moments, right, that unravel in front of our eyes. We see that a lot happening, like in the Olympics, when there's like an underdog, just all of a sudden blows everyone's minds out of the way and all that stuff like that. And to see something like this happen, it really was a magical history. Everyone got caught up in it. It didn't matter if you were a diehard basketball fan or not. If you were someone who was from the Asian community, you got caught up in it. Everyone I knew in the community got caught up in it. I remember buying the Sports Illustrated magazine with him on the cover for the very first time. And like I kept that away, safely and everything. I have the jersey still somewhere. I remember just like the magic and the atmosphere at MSG every time I would go. It was just it really was a magical moment. And it was a good recollection of hearing from Tyson Chandler and Iman Shumpert, who I think Iman Shumpert's like permanently high, right? Because I feel like he's just like always just like big ass grin on his face, and like he's just always like but they keep it real, and that's the great thing about it, about especially hearing Tyson say things like, I didn't know who this dude was. I never personally seen him play in practice, and I thought he was just a random guy asking for an autograph and all that stuff. So it was like really, really. I wish they had a chance to interview Landry Fields, because I
Mm,
know him and Jeremy were very tight. Landry was the guy that Jeremy slept on the couch. That was his
yeah.
apartment and all that, and they explained that in the documentary. So it would have been awesome to see him, speaking out about it. And it was nice that they actually had Jeremy Lin recounting the events himself instead of
Yeah.
some
Sure.
other narrator doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because Jeremy, and this is something that they cover in the documentary. Like, he fought his way to get to this point. He fought really hard. even after the magic ended, and he found himself getting traded here and there, and he couldn't really get that magic back. They mentioned that he won a championship with Toronto, but he was basically a bench dude, right? Like he didn't really play a lot during that season. It was interesting that he, even after the fact, he continued to fight and fight and fight. Now he's playing in Asia, where, of course, anytime a big NBA star goes to Asia, they blow up, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he has his own, Jeremy Lin brand out there now. That's
Mm-hmm.
the shirt he was rocking and all that. Just like Stephen Marbury having his own sneaker line and everything. So, things have ended up nicely for him. But yeah, if anything, this documentary, what it did really well is it just recaptured that moment and kind of put you back in that moment, especially if you were aware of it. And if you weren't, then it's a great insight on how easy it was to get caught up in that moment and
Oh
how it
yeah.
affected so many different people, whether you're a basketball fan or not. So yeah, definitely recommend you watch it, and it's a very easy watch. Like Blake said, it's very quick. Maybe if you want something really quick to watch before you go to bed or whatever the case is, pop that on. You won't be disappointed. It's very
Yep.
very fascinating, for sure.
Yep.
And if you do, let us know in the comments. I know we don't talk about sports usually on this channel or anything like that, but like I said, as a New Yorker, as a basketball fan, as for me, a New York Knicks fan, this was a very particular moment in history that I'll never forget because it was very very magical indeed. It was Linsane,
Yeah.
to say the least. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. But before we continue, I wanted to quickly talk about Bulletproof Coffee. Bulletproof Coffee is my favorite coffee of choice to start off my mornings with. Why? Because it's clean coffee. What does that mean? Well, one, there are no chemicals in it. Why? Because they go through this multi-step process of making sure that all of their beans are fully clean and free of any chemicals, so that when you get the beans delivered to you, it is the pure beans, the pure coffee, the goodness that you've been wanting, the taste, the flavor, and the nutritional value as well, without worrying about any added chemicals or anything else put into the mix there. It also doesn't have that weird acidic taste that some coffees give you. I don't know how about you, but for me, some coffees kind of give me that weird sensation in my stomach, makes me a little burpy, and it kind of drags me down a little bit instead of really waking me up, which is something that I need from my coffee every day. Bulletproof also offers a lot of keto-friendly snacks and supplements, anything that you need to kind of add to your everyday nutritional needs, add to your diet, pretty much transforms the way you feel every day. So for a limited time, if you use this code that you see on the screen right now, LOWKEY GEEK, all caps, one word, you can get 15% off your order. So what is it better than that, right? Check out the link in the description of this episode. Use this code, get yourself your discount, and make your mornings a little bit more bulletproof with Bulletproof Coffee. Now, back to the episode. Let us now move on to our main topic for this week's episode, and that is the movie Tar.
Ooh, yeah.
So, yeah, and it's funny because Blake and I briefly spoke before we started recording, and it is this. I'm glad we're going to have a chance to talk about this because
Yep.
when I saw this movie last week, I think I had the same feeling that Blake had when we were going into it. We weren't sure exactly what kind of movie we were going to get. I think, and I think Blake shares the same sentiment here. I thought it was going to be a movie that explores the rise of
Mm-hmm.
fame and popularity of this female composer trying to break the gender rules and all that, because every time you see like composers and conductors on TV or whatever, it's always guys, right? So now we have
Mm-hmm.
this female led who's like rising to power and the struggle she has to get to, claim the fame and all that. And I thought that was what this movie was. However, as the movie continued to play on and things start to unravel, it turned into this whole other different type of movie where we are seeing a woman struggle with her psyche, and mainly because she's doing a lot of these things that are now starting to unravel and break down her life, break down her career trajectory, meddling with her family, meddling with her persona, meddling with how people perceive her. And basically, the way I would describe it in the review I have on the channel right now it's cancel culture, but through the lens of a female from a female. You know, we're so used of seeing like the hashtag Me Too movements and all that, and it's always the guys, right? And it's been like that for ages, right? And that's it's coming into light more and more. So, but here is now you have a female who is the one victimizing people, and doing a lot of these things, and how that is now affecting herself, and how it's affecting a lot of people around her, messing with her mental stability. And there's a lot of moments in this movie where and Blake mentioned this to me before, and he'll talk more about it in a minute. You're not sure what we're seeing on screen is really happening or not, because of
Mm,
a lot of these dream sequences, or things that she's seeing, or things that she's hearing. But overall, I thought it was such a very well done movie for Todd Field, who hasn't done a movie in 16 years. And this is a movie that he also wrote and directed.
mm,
It's not something that's been adapted from another source material.
right.
And he had, at least when I saw the Q&A, he had Cate Blanchett in mind when he wrote this story already.
Yeah.
So it was just like this whole synchrony of things that just really worked well together. Plus, you had Nina Hoss, who was a great companion piece to Lydia Tár's character there. In a way, Nina Hoss's characters kind of is us, the audience. We see the unraveling in front of us, as she was seeing it too. And it was interesting to see it all play out there. Another thing I will say that this movie achieves really well is amazing sound design. The way the
Yeah.
sound plays out through the movie, the little audio cues, the little as she's going through her kind of like mental breakdowns, or her sleepless nights, she gets haunted by sounds that she can't figure out. And the way that that plays throughout the movie, and you hear it like on the left channel, the right channel, all that stuff like that. It's like really, really fascinating how that's all done. The music itself, the score is great. Um, but yeah, there's just this movie is just a really well put together movie. But Blake, I am definitely interested and curious to hear
Hmm.
about your thoughts on the movie. Before we dive deeper into, okay, what did this mean? What was the ending? What
Hmm.
is this mysterious symbol that we see throughout the movie, and all that stuff?
I am also curious how I feel about this movie, and that's why I'm glad we do this.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it's on the record, so that way I can figure it out and just
Hmm.
have it just. Um, I'll start with I was hyped for this movie, and I thought it was going to be more of a traditional music biopic, like what you said.
Yeah.
An incredible story, and maybe some sadness, tragic elements, etc. But
Sure.
a story about a beautiful musician making beautiful art, kind of thing, an amazing life story. They overcome things, they die too early, something like that. But overall, celebration of a life, and it was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Um, Big picture, the directing was phenomenal. You mentioned the sound, the acting was phenomenal. I'm reminded of Cate Blanchette's Oscar-winning performance for Blue Jasmine, where she also
Yes.
plays a woman who's a POS and loses it.
Yes.
And that was I can't. It makes sense that they wrote it with Kate in mind, because that's the exact person you would cast for this exact role. It felt like a few times early on in the movie, especially, where it felt like I was seeing Cate Blanchett act, whereas normally she's fully transformed into
Hmm.
a role. And then we realized later this character might be leading a bit of a double life. They might be
Hmm.
saying things that they don't mean, or manipulating people. And then with that, I go, oh my gosh, Cate Blanchett is doing one of the toughest feats. It's the whatever, the Axel 720 of acting, where you have to literally, you're an actor who's playing a character who is acting, and you're supposed to show that this character is doing a good job at it and at manipulating people. But you also need to tell the audience, just tip the hat a little bit, like, okay, I am currently manipulating someone and I am aware of it, but it is successful enough. That's a very difficult thing to get across. Kate Blanchett does it so well.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for these kinds of movies where we see someone hit their brink and then watch the pieces fall apart. Something about it, I'm very compelled by this type of story.
Hmm.
This one was particularly hard to watch, and there's a couple reasons why. We'll get into the ending and the symbolism, etc. But essentially, this is a character who is hurting people and a character who's pushed to that
Mhm.
madness through, it seems to me, their own actions.
Right.
But while that's happening, the question is, what's real and what's not? What's not real? What is it that they're aware of they're doing? Do they know that they're doing this? There's some folks, right? There's plenty of mad geniuses in history who write the most amazing works, but their brain got there because of some things that they've gone through or some tricks that they learned in order to survive.
Mhm.
And they don't even realize that they're being awful or super cheap or hurting everyone they love, or a serial cheater or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Like as if they are living a double life and couldn't possibly be aware of it, because like this is just the life I have to live and I can't take account.
Yeah.
If you're doing horrible things to people, it's really hard to look in the mirror and go, yeah, I do terrible things to people every day. Usually, at least from my experience, if someone's doing this stuff, like you read about characters in history, usually they're not aware of the effect that they're having, or they go, yeah, I have to do this, so I'm just going to keep pushing through, I'll deal with it later. And it's a character who ends up getting their comeuppance. So if you don't want to watch someone who is using their position of power for influence against other people and
Mhm.
hurting the people that they love, and if the idea of someone exerting their power for the movie leaves things pretty vague, but I feel like it's pretty safe to assume like sexual favors, or at least that's what people in the movie are definitely alleging, and for possibly driving someone to the point of madness, suicide, lying about it, covering up their actions, just generally kind of being a fuckhead to everyone that they interact with,
Mhm.
um, being really biting and shitty. And it was so interesting to watch the movie do this. She says horrible things to a man sitting across from her at the dinner table, and you're laughing in the audience, but you're also going, I can't believe a human is saying this, looking at another human in the eyes. They are so cutthroat. And it's a funny line, but it's also disgusting to watch someone be evil to someone else and just act like they aren't. There's a
Yeah.
whole scene, which I'm sure other people will give think pieces on. There's a whole scene where it's part of her getting canceled, where she's giving a
Yeah.
lecture and saying problematic things to a bunch of students. And you're sitting there like, okay, that was a really great diss, a takedown. This woman's obviously very intelligent, but also you should know better and you're being hurtful right now. So let's just pretend you're right. You don't have to say these things, and you definitely should, or it might come back to bite you. Guess what? It does.
Right.
My main experience watching it in the theater is I was with a buddy and we had that thing afterward where you just kind of like sit in your seat for a long time and don't say anything. You're like, that was rough. I want to get to the end in a second because that actually does change the movie in some ways. But and one other thing we'll get into, there's a symbol, there's what's real and what's not. Can we trust the narrator?
Mhm.
Um, Before we do that, theater experience. Theater experience here was AMC Lincoln Square, which is real close to the Met Opera, which is definitely name dropped in the movie. It seemed like an audience that was hyped for this kind of movie. Right now, it's select cinemas on the LA and New York. It's going broad, I think, this weekend of
Yeah.
October 14th.
Mhm.
But yeah, this was an audience who chose to see the new Cate Blanchette tour de force and probably has some experience in the arts or appreciating the arts or something like that. The audience seemed to be on the exact same page, where there was a lot of like, huh, whew, and just a lot of quiet.
Mhm.
It's not dissimilar from A Quiet Place. It's a movie where sound is very important, and there's a lot of quiet moments in this movie. The only other thing I'll say about my theater experience is I'd like to apologize to everyone near row Q, because my buddy brought a box of pizza,
Oh
and I
no.
brought peanuts in a plastic, and both of them were very difficult to open. And it was such a quiet movie for about the first 20 to 25 minutes of just conversation, a Q&A, a dinner conversation. And I kept waiting for the da-da Beethoven moment with the hand. We get a few of those later. No, I was trying to be so quiet.
Mhm.
And it became so much louder. And this is a movie where at some point the character says that somebody posits that sensitivity to noise is a mark of someone's intelligence. And I would like to say, for anyone in that area, you are so intelligent, I'm sure, because I'm certain I bothered your viewing experience. My bad. Overall, definitely go see this in theaters soon if you're into that kind of thing. If you want this form of punishment slash art, and very, very well crafted art,
Mhm.
tens across the board on almost every category of filmmaking. And definitely I would see it sooner because you get to enjoy that experience with like-minded folks who are looking for that. and that was very, very fun.
Yeah.
What
No,
what
for
what
sure.
was your? I love how you just casually keep name dropping New York Film Festival as if it's not causing my FOMO to flare up super hard. Thanks a lot. But no, go
Yeah,
ahead
no
and
problem.
tell me a little bit more about what it was like seeing Cate Blanchett in person.
Um, it wasn't that great. It wasn't. Yeah,
Q&As are actually kind of whack, right? Hot take.
yeah.
Hot take. Q&As kind of suck.
Here's the truth of it. I love
Eh,
Q&As up until the point they start asking the audience questions
go
because
off.
yeah,
Yes. No one ever
because
ask another question. If you're someone who wants to ask a question, don't, because you're not the person who should be asking questions right now.
right,
Ugh.
exactly. Because
Ugh.
it's one of the cringy moments where I start to like really like tighten up and just like, oh boy, here we go. Don't make a fool out of yourselves. Because there's usually a moderator who has a formal set of questions to engage the actress or director with, and it's thought provoking and all that stuff like that. And then you have an audience member who will start asking questions like, well, how was it like to play the piano for the first time on screen? Or what did you feel like when you were sitting there and the dog was licking your face?
No,
It's just
no, one happens every time. Hey, for an aspiring artist, what advice would you give? Every time you watch Inside the Actors Studio, what advice
right,
would you
right,
give
right, right,
to other people trying to do this thing?
right.
Or I guess at New York Film Festival will be a little bit different, but still, I was recently at an Isabel Sandoval, one of my favorite auteurs, and for her movie Senorita, and someone asked an offensive question, and I don't think they did it on. I know they
Mm,
didn't do it on purpose. I'm sure of it.
mm-hmm.
They asked a question that was just so insulting to her background and her culture. I'm sitting there
Yeah.
like, this is why we shouldn't have Q&As. And I actually, in general, I'm also, my hot takes one further. Q&As in general kind of suck, and interviews with people who are very like interviews with athletes, interviews
Mm-hmm.
with celebrities usually aren't great. If the interview is entertaining and that's the purpose, like Hot Ones or Jimmy Fallon, it can be great.
Sure.
Most of the time, it's just this person's not going to say anything too wild or that they're not allowed to say. And everyone's media training in 2022 is so fire that it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty bland. And every now and then you get a little anecdote, but it's a lot of like, it's a lot of talking and not as much juice as the only, to me, the cool thing is like, I got to say I saw that person in
Sure.
person and name
Sure.
drop them 2 months later on an episode of MovieTime, or in your
Right.
case, a
Right.
week
Right.
later.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
No,
Thank you
I
for
mean,
now. My FOMO was decreased a little. Thank you so much. That was very
right.
generous.
Yeah. But of course, like that being said, seeing Cate Blanchett in person was just phenomenal. And just like
Damn it.
I was just in awe the
Damn it.
whole time because she is
Lie to
like
me.
one of like top three favorite actresses, if not like top for me.
Yo.
So like I was just like it couldn't get any better for me at that moment right there. Um, but the audience again, New York Film Festival type of audience. So you have your cinephiles, you have your like I don't know if there were any critics there for sure. Maybe. You have film students. You have like so these are people who are like in the art. They appreciate the art of movie making and storytelling and all that. So even though I think a lot of people were taken back from what what was unraveled in front of them as the movie kept going, they were very much engaged, 100%. And again, it was just like Triangle of Sadness. It was another one of those movies where afterwards, a lot of people and groups were just talking about it afterwards
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
Because it does lead to a lot of conversation, especially with like some of the subject matters that were kind of talked about or like spread throughout the movie like this. Um, and by the way, like while you were talking, I popped up the spoiler alert warning, just in case we spoil anything for anybody. So starting from now, as we dive deeper into the movie, we are definitely going to start revealing stuff. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up about that. I don't think what you said was too much of a reveal on certain things, but just in case some people are sensitive about it, I popped up that little warning up there. So, but with that being said, so yeah, the movie theater experience for me was just, it was what I expected it to be when I am with like-minded folk who are
Yeah.
there to, and I think if anything, people were just so into Kate's performance. Like I think
Yeah.
everyone just could not take their eyes off of her every time, and I think she with this type of performance and with especially with this type of character, she did her job where you couldn't take your eyes off of her. You couldn't just stop paying attention because it was just so fascinating how you are seeing this woman who is pretty much at the peak of her career and getting to that next level, gearing up for this live performance that they're taping that could like launch her into the stratosphere of whatever, she's doing. But you could tell there's like something's off about her, right? And I think one
Mm.
of the best things that they did was have that interview in the beginning of the movie that basically kind of told you the kind of person that she is, how she's always quoting this and quoting that and looking on up up on this guy and is inspired by this person and everything like that. And she's very much a collegiate studier of music and knows the ins and outs, and she knows her shit. And they talk about gender and the power struggles there, and I don't see myself as male, female. I'm just a composer, conductor, and this and that. But you could tell like there's some things like the way she sits down, the way that she was kind of spacing out, concerned about her appearance, concerned about her what she was gonna say, the way she was scratching at the chair, like you
Hmm.
could tell there's a lot of things playing around in her head because she wants to look like she's always in control. She wants to look like she always has her shit together. She's also I like when she was helping her neighbor pick up her poor mother who fell on the floor, how she couldn't stand the fact that she had to touch her, right? So she was like washing herself up afterwards and like all concerned about germs and all this kind of stuff like that, and everything for her has to be perfect. And then when it's not, she loses it. And we see that happening as it's like the film keeps going, going, going because everything starts getting stripped away, stripped away, stripped away. And that's when her mental state just gets very unstable and she starts losing everything. The infidelity, it was made very clear that she was having an affair with a student that was obsessive, and but we don't know why. Maybe she was promising her stuff and all that, whatever the case is, because we would see the obsession because we would see this redheaded figure just hanging out in the background, either through the interview or while she's walking down the street. She touches someone's foot in the apartment that's not where her wife or her partner lives. So who's that, right? It's like, but we never see her face up until that tragic moment where we find out that she committed suicide. And that's what opened up the floodgates to the whole, okay, so Lydia Tár is using her influence to get what she wants, but she denies the whole thing. She's like, no, this was just a crazy stalker, this and that. And then that's when the true personality of her or the true persona of her is kind of coming out. And it mirrors a lot of stuff that we're hearing today in news, with a lot of people with that power, with that authority, where they use their influence to get what they want. They think they can get away with it. They think they could do whatever they want. And then when it's brought to light, then they start losing all of that. They start losing the prestige. They start losing this chance for that chance for that. And then we see them kind of break down and we see them like kind of lose their shit. And in this case, we saw that pretty much happening from beginning to end. But we also saw how it could really fuck with someone's mental state and everything. And that's what causes the questions of, did we see what we thought we saw, or is she losing her mind? When she was chasing after that girl, was there really a dog there that was chasing her down, or was this a
Hmm.
figment of her imagination?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of things that just didn't make sense. Like if she heard her singing in the background, you would hear her calling out to her. Then where the hell did this dog come from? And then how come no one heard her being chased by this dog or whatever the case is? So we see her going through all this paranoia, all this stuff. She can't sleep because she keeps hearing these noises in her apartment. But were those noises really happening? And all that stuff. It was just such a fascinating case study. And I will say this: the one interesting question that someone did ask her in the Q&A was someone who was actually a psych student, and she did ask a question about psyche and how that really
Hmm.
played an important role in this movie. And it's very true. Like we do see the psyche of Lydia Tár and how that really broke down as things were happening and transpiring, seeing her nightmarish dreams, her guilt playing out in her mind, with the infidelity, with the things that she's doing to her partner, and then eventually the loss of her daughter because now she can't see her daughter anymore. The one saving grace that she had of any sense of normality and innocence was through the lens of her daughter, right? And the fact that she couldn't do that anymore. So it was just really, really fascinating. But all throughout, the the performance from Cate Blanchett really carried the movie, and this movie would not have been so impactful if it wasn't for her.
1,000%. And again, kudos to someone who can pull off something this difficult, such a precise performance, such a precise character, and dealing with mental health stuff. As someone who's sensitive to that, there are
Yeah,
times where you see someone do it and they don't do it well, and it's pretty offensive. There's sometimes you see someone do it and it's like, okay, they at least understand enough. And it was Cate Blanchett's one of the best people for that exact type of role, and
hmm
basically any type of role, anything between Thor or this Blue Jasmine, name it.
Nightmare
I was just
Alley.
looking at yeah. So there's so many. Did a quick Google before we recorded the top 5 actresses of all time, just to see
Mm.
what the first things getting suggested. Kate is number 5 on the list, and there's about 2 names above her. I think they're pretty like these people are more famous over history, but Kate's easily top 3, top 5, top
Oh
10 all
yeah,
time. I'd be shocked if anyone worth their salt would have her outside of top 20. That's all time. This is to be expected from Cate Blanchett, and still to be going on about 20 years strong and hitting home runs this
yeah.
hard. It's a big lift in this movie. A lot of her on that screen.
Oh yeah.
Difficult to pull off. Brilliant, brilliant work there. I think I, I think if are you down to start getting into
Yeah,
what it means, the ending, the what's what? Because
absolutely. Yeah.
I remember sitting in the theater and I felt kind of bad again for the people next to me because I'm literally like hands on my knees, head in my hands, and just like staring intently. And I kind of got lost in the moment. It was such a compelling story and such a compelling performance that I was able to. I'm so glad. Love doing it. Love talking to you through this. The buddy I saw it with, we walked an hour together, just like, okay, what did this mean? What was that? It's one of those movies for sure. To me, there's basically two theses to this movie.
Mhm.
One is her brother says it later on. You don't know where you came from. You don't know where you're going. That's true of anyone who's in what's by the end when she was so stressed out and all her actions were coming to bite her at the same time, going from crisis to denial
Yeah.
to crisis. She's go she's literally like in an almost fugue state, it seemed. Can barely keep track of all the threads of her life as they are currently unraveling.
Mhm.
And that is one of the things you're watching. And there's a sympathy that you have for this character
Mhm.
because it's possible whatever's going on in her head that she doesn't know what she has done or is doing or what the future holds. She just has this very tight character and very precise and hard edged. And yet, one nice thing about the movie to me is it wasn't. I was really worried at the end it'd be like and they got away with it. They paid a settlement and now they're back on top. We'll get to the ending in a second, but
Yeah.
the there's multiple things. So yeah, I guess that the other part is the truth will find you out.
Mhm.
That's how I interpreted the symbol that comes up a few times in the movie. There are things that don't have clear meanings, like you're saying. Is this a dream? Is this a figment of Tar's imagination? There's a symbol that repeats, and I don't know what it means. I Googled the hell out of it. You joined me at some point, and
Yeah.
we looked for every article, no mention of it. But there's a symbol that occurs in 3 times where she's traumatized, and something is happening that is letting her know things aren't quite right. And when that happens somewhere in a monogram or a note, there is a symbol that appears, and maybe it's just a stamp someone puts on their envelopes, and that's their symbol, and everybody knows it.
Mhm.
I want to rewatch this movie again for things like this, and there are others. There's one of my favorite moments is where there's the mattress, the bed on a pond, as if she's floating, and it's catching on fire, and it was just so
Yeah.
evocative, like
Oh
just
yeah.
for art film stuff, like that was
Beautiful. It was
beautiful.
so
I need a whole
beautiful. Yeah.
music video of just that, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
little moment was, wild. And
Yeah.
then she's waking up, and then she finds one of those things that's haunting her.
Mhm.
And maybe that was a double dream. The director, there's a couple times for sure this is a dream. You see her snap awake during it, or
Right.
it's shown through the reflection in the water of someone kind of like fixing her back, and
Mhm.
yet it seems violent at the same time. Um, Apologies if you already mentioned this, but one of the metaphorical things that happens as far as this character gets the truth catches up to them, it's an old trope in movies where she ends up suffering a deformity where she's running from something,
Right.
which is a metaphor, and then she falls, another metaphor,
Yeah.
and then she ends up having literal lacerations on her face from
Mhm.
hitting a step, and her back is crooked. At some point, this is what this movie does really well. At some point, the phrase is, "I'm a little crooked. I need an adjustment."
Mhm.
And this is one of those films where on the third, fourth watch, I'm sure I'll find more lines like that. And
Yeah.
it'll be like, oh, that happens at the exact moment when things start to catch up to her. I think, and then I'll throw it back to you. I'm sure there's a few more things we can get back into of symbols in the movie, or was this real or was this not? I think it's open enough to interpretation because some things are clearly not real or they're dreams, and some things are
Mhm.
happening. But like the dog you mentioned, the director doesn't tip the hat and say, "Oh, now it's disappeared. It must have not been real." We
Right.
don't know. There's a moment where she's running through Central Park, and this is a character who's very sensitive to sound and very sensitive in general, even though
Yeah.
it comes off as hard acidness. Maybe that's
Mhm.
because she's so sensitive, can't begin to have empathy for others because it'll crush her. At some point, she hears a woman screaming bloody
Oh
murder
yeah. Yeah.
in of the
In the
park
park. Yeah.
and starts trying to hunt down the noise. It's something that her character does a few times. Where is this noise coming from? She's
Mhm.
really good at it. It's kind of cool to watch a savant in that way, or like a genius in that way,
Yeah.
use it. And like, this could have been a detective movie. For a minute, you're like, oh, is this movie about to be about a murder and her discovering it through the power
Right.
of
Right.
ears?
Right. Yeah.
But we don't know if that really happened. It's
Mhm.
possible that she's kind of so beside herself. She's hearing, and there's like, it's part of what I'm getting at. Like, the truth will find you out. Like, maybe her subconscious is literally screaming out, and she can't figure out where it's coming from because she doesn't know where she came from or where she's going, and she's just running in circles trying to find the truth.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a lot to talk about in this movie. It has those double meanings. I think the only other thing I'll mention, I'll throw it to you, is we she has the back injury. She is crooked. She needs an adjustment.
Mhm.
But it was done slight enough. It wasn't too heavy-handed of a metaphor. And then near the end of the movie, when her comeuppance is about to happen, I'll throw that one to you.
Mhm.
She says, "I need a massage because I have this injury," and she's been exploiting people. And then they go, "Oh, no problem. We know the right place." She's obviously in a new city, trying to find herself and jumpstart her career again.
Yeah.
It's a
I
little
love this moment.
unclear.
Mhm.
She goes to a massage parlor and they say, "Choose one." And she goes, "How, what do you
Yeah.
mean?" And there's a group of women who are, she would be using, like, shout out to sex work.
Mhm.
I don't know how consensual these things were, but it seemed to freak out Lydia Tár for sure because of her past. And it's like this, she's going to get triggered for a long time about the things that she
Right.
did that she'd never acknowledged to art, at least from what we saw. And they're literally, the women are aligned like an orchestra in that same formation, and she's standing at the front of them and just
Mhm.
freaks. And of course, the movie's really good at that kind of double meaning, double imagery, words that can mean two things, and leaving things loose enough to where we could talk about this and go over every item in line. And I'm sure on the fifth rewatch and the 10th rewatch, there will be even more. So let me throw it
Mhm.
back over to you before we just go full geek mode on every single metaphor and what's it all mean.
Right.
Yeah, but by all means.
Yeah, no, I mean, this movie definitely has a lot of moments where if you take enough time to think about it afterwards, you do kind of question a lot of things and how what it means symbolism wise, or at least what it means to the narrative of the story, right? Hearing you talk about it, since you're probably your viewing is the freshest between the both of us, because I saw it like a week prior. You just saw it like a couple days
You saw it at
before.
New York Film Festival. I know you want to mention it. Go ahead.
Well,
Yep.
I didn't want to say
You
all
saw
that,
Cate
but
Blanchette in person. Yeah. Okay. Thank you,
and
Renee.
then maybe her presence kind of like wiped my memory of the
Uh-huh.
movie, because that's
Mm-hmm.
just so powerful. That's how she is, her vision and everything. Like, mwah.
Damn you.
But anyway,
Damn you.
um, but there are a lot of things that I recall as I was watching the movie wondering, is this really happening or not? And a lot of it also had to do with the new young student that she puts in her orchestra. Like there are a lot of moments where you could tell she's fawning over this young student, kind of like repeating something that has happened prior that is going to eventually get her into trouble, and it does later on in the movie.
Hmm.
Um, but she's not getting exactly the way she wants it. So it's almost as if the universe is like fighting against her, but then kind of like calling her out as to, are you really gonna move forward with this and kind of mess yourself up,
Uh-huh.
or are you gonna or are you gonna stop it now and realize what you're doing? But she keeps pushing against the force of nature. She keeps pursuing it. Like they go away together for because Kate's attending this. I believe it was like a conference or something like that, or a meeting. So she decides to bring the young girl instead of her partner or whatever the case is.
She's
You
going to
could
do a book
tell
signing, if I recall, because
that's
her
it.
book Tar on
That's right.
Tar. I
Yes,
need an
tar on
assistant, and
tar.
my assistant has unfortunately no longer with me. I got to
Right.
bring somebody.
Right.
Yo, so brazen. And this is part of
Yeah.
the thing. If you're not taking account of like how am I perceived, are my actions affecting others? Will there be consequences?
Yeah.
Of course, this is a terrible idea. Even let's just say she never did one thing wrong to
Hmm.
anybody. Once you know, people will have their eyes on you, and like there's rumors go, oh, I'll bring anybody else.
It's a
I'll carry
perception.
my own
Yeah.
bags this time, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. The perception is just not a good look, right? And you could tell like she did have ulterior motives there.
Of
But
course.
then when, you know, when they're back in the hotel and she's like, "Oh, so you want to grab dinner?" And she's like, "No, I'm tired. I'm going to go sleep."
Oh, yeah.
And then she goes out and sees her sneaking out into the elevator like all dressed up nicely and all that. It made me wonder like did she really see that, or was this her
Oh.
mind playing
I
tricks on her, or was this the
didn't think
universe
about
telling
that
her
one.
something, you know? Because
Yeah.
again, it goes back to the whole dog situation. She follows the girl into this building complex because she left a teddy bear. But I think secretly she wanted, maybe a nice smooch or whatever the case is. Because if you notice the what's that?
Sorry, even just the teddy bear. I missed the origin of it, but I thought it was her daughter's teddy bear. And there's a moment where they're in the car and she's saying goodbye to her, like she's sending her off to
Yeah.
school. There's this weird
Right.
thing where the and I almost okay, I'm gonna tangent. Maybe I should just let you take back over. There's a whole nother interpretation of this movie where there's more to that.
Mm-hmm.
And this 20 something woman, 30 something woman that she
Yeah.
has the crush on is holding like the girl's toy. And I don't know that it's the daughter's, but it might be. There are moments where she's interacting with the daughter. I'm like, please don't be a monster. Please at least
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
one pure relationship in your life. I don't know. But it's almost like she can't help herself. And this other woman who she has a crush on, but maybe becomes a daughter mother dynamic there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's going, oh, you left your, what's like a binky, essentially. Like you left
Right,
your
right,
little
right,
teddy
right.
bear toy.
Yeah.
Maybe, even if it is the woman's and we saw it before, I don't recall that. But I honestly thought when I saw it, like she picked it up off the ground in the car. And then she's now coming up with the reason of like, oh, this was yours. You were holding this. You want this. I'll chase you down. I don't know. But there was multiple other ways where I got this Olga, I believe is the character's name, or Helga, is a stand-in for the daughter, and this might actually be happening to the daughter, but we'll leave that fully aside because there's a
Yeah.
little version. But there's like three different things where they hint at it of the way she is treating and talking to that character that she has a
Uh-huh.
crush on. So yeah,
Yeah. No, you definitely took a darker thought process along with where
yep.
I was going. But, again, this is the type of movie where you kind of like, if you spend some time, you could analyze and come up with a lot of different conclusions. The way
Sorry, and this director did Little Children, so I wouldn't put it
of
past the
course, of
director to
course,
have
of
some
of
wild
course,
turn like that, which
of
is why
course.
in my head I was like, I know this is that director. They
Yeah.
fucked with me one time on this issue.
Oh,
Please don't do that again.
totally. And if you don't
Oof.
want it,
Yeah.
yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, Little Children was Todd Field's last movie that he directed again 16 years ago. Look it up on Google. You'll know exactly what we're talking about because it is definitely interesting and it could play along with the lines of what is happening here. The way I interpreted it is Kate is fascinated and attracted to innocence. And I think that's like one of the things that she gets
Mm.
drawn to,
Mm.
especially, if you recall, the more she learned about the new student, watching her old YouTube video performances and all that, you see she is infatuated because there is a sense of innocence there where, someone who's like never done this before, and now she's getting the spotlight, and now she's getting, some notoriety. She gets drawn to that. She gets drawn to her daughter because obviously there's love to the daughter there, but it is her gateway to a more innocent way of looking at things.
Mm,
When the daughter was
I see.
arranging her toys into like an orchestral thing, and she wanted to give every member a stick.
Hmm.
You hear
Oh my God.
Kate
Let it
say,
go, Kate.
right. You hear Kate be like, "Well, not everyone can be a conductor." Like that, like I don't understand like what you're trying to do here. But again,
Mm,
it's like that innocence thing. But going back to the whole, apartment or building thing, you notice like the girl will walk into the building and she leaves the door open, almost like inviting Kate to kind of chase after her. As Kate is pursuing her, she hears like singing in the background and like what could be
right.
her, right? So she's chasing, 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 but calling her out the whole time. But no response, no response. And then that's when the dog shows up, and that's when she starts running for her life, and that's what led into her accident where she trips, falls, hurts her back and messes up her face. Now again, who knows if this was real, if that whole situation was real. Who know, it made me question. There was one point in the movie where I questioned if even that girl was real, if that
Yeah.
student was real.
Yeah.
Because she sees her in the bathroom just very quickly, right? She sees her in the distance very quickly. The only time I realized, yes, she was real is when other people were noticing her in the orchestra. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
so she's real, but there could be manifestations of her that is not happening. Again, the whole hotel situation, the whole, building complex situation. This is Kate's mind playing tricks on her and all that because, again, maybe there's that guilt in there that messes with her or whatever the case is.
Mm,
And I think, again, it also plays along the lines with that same student that committed suicide. Like, I felt like, again, there was another innocence factor there where someone who is the mentor looking upon this up and coming person, looking for guidance and all that. I'm sure they've done stuff because, or else where would the fascination come from? Where would the obsession come from? Right.
mm,
So much so, and then you see the emails, the
mm.
correspondences. The fact
The
again that
intimidation.
the intimidation
Uh,
that, the fact that Lydia needs to have control of her narrative, and she like basically blacklists her from all
mhm.
the, like music departments and orchestras all throughout New York and whatever the case is.
Which is
you know
probably illegal to do to
right,
someone, and especially if they're the victim, which the assumption from me, and I'm assuming the rest of the audience, is that person was a victim,
right.
accuses the person of what they have done or reacts accordingly.
Hmm.
And so I don't know we don't actually get that backstory, which is really interesting. We get hints
Yeah.
of it, but like a
Hmm.
lot of things in the movie, it's open to interpretation. Nonetheless, I think every single member of our audience, I have to assume, goes, I don't think that was a false accusation or whatever
No.
went wrong between them, which we
Yeah.
don't even really, really know. Like, they don't even show or tell us what went wrong in the dynamic there and how, who did
Hmm.
what when. But then, nonetheless, she's coming after this person who are the people watching the movie are like, oh, that this person's a monster, this person's a victim. And then the monster is still trying to blacklist the victim for
Right.
outing them as a monster. And that kind of thing kept happening throughout the movie. These things are ridiculous. How am I supposed to account
Hmm.
for something that never happened? At
Yeah.
some point, the wife confronts her, and Cate Blanchette lashes out and overreacts and criticizes the wife and tries to essentially
Hmm.
convince the wife that she's crazy and like, oh, you're going to bring this stuff up again, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And like, of course, these things are going to catch up to you if you don't take a second to reflect consequences, address them internally at the very least.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, all of that. And I love that example that you're giving of another thing that's kind of open to interpretation. And everything in the movie is essentially subject to. I'm curious of like of the facts that we know and see occur in the movie, how many of them
Yeah.
are officially, we know that that person, when they touched them, that's what that meant. Because there's definitely
Right.
accusations. There's when she puts her hand on the small of someone's back, and based on
Hmm.
context clues, we're supposed to think that wasn't a come on, but when that is shared later on YouTube, that it was shown as if it was.
Right.
They zoom in on that moment. There's another moment where she's touching the purse of a woman she's talking to, and it seems like,
Hmm.
okay, she's about to do some infidelity. There's plenty of things that we get the picture that they're a monster, this might be one of those second watch things, and I could be totally wrong. I might just be a little too in the weeds here. It is possible that this movie is actually about how, and the director is about to do a, hey, everybody, this is one of those Rorschach tests. We didn't see her do one thing wrong. We just saw, she says the wrong things. She says problematic things. She says the mean things to people. She's cutting and rude and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people are quick to turn on her. I don't know the facts of what she did to who. And we know that at least the young character that she was pursuing, that we didn't see anything happen with him. It seemed like the young character wasn't interested. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing to watch on the second one. Is this director trying to make some anti-cancel culture take on that,
Mm-hmm.
or in that type of way? It is going to be one of those things that's so loaded and charged for any member of the audience. They're all going to have some
Oh yeah.
hot opinion, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
at least it'll evoke something in them about wherever you're coming from in your identity and the world and how you feel about these things.
Yeah.
Which they're even bringing up early on in the movie when she's talking to the young students.
Mm-hmm.
There is no disambiguity with the ending of the movie, and that it is tragic, and she is
Yeah.
properly eating it and
Mm-hmm.
suffering the outcomes of her actions. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and before we get into that, just another couple of points. Um, Definitely, it is one of those things where, like you said, it could be a little bit of everything. It could be, kind of a spin on the whole cancer culture thing. It could be because of how we perceive certain things, we automatically assume and accuse someone for doing a lot of these things. And at the same time, maybe she is actually doing some of these things, right? So I feel like it could be a combination of all of that, because that could
Yeah.
all be very dangerous, right? It could all be very dangerous. How we perceive certain things because of the way it's presented to us. How someone is so focused on controlling their own narrative that they try to spin it in a different way, but maybe they really are doing these things. It's just a whole, one thing that we shouldn't glance over is the way she treats her assistant. How her
Hmm.
assistant is just basically belittled every time, ignored, all that kind of stuff like that. Every time we do see the symbol, if I recall, it has to tie with the assistant or something that was done with the assistant. The assistant is the one that gives the gift to Lydia. Lydia finally opens the gift on the plane, sees some of the symbols on the book, all of that, freaks out. Something happens with the assistant. That's when she wakes up, hears the metronome going off in the background. Metronome has those symbols on it. The assistant gets fired. Now Lydia is trying to go back because now the assistant is helping with some investigation about all the accusations and all that. The apartment's empty with the exception of the manuscript of Tar on Tar, where she writes lies, 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 and all that stuff like that. And we see the
Rat on
symbols.
rat. She
Rat on
reverses
rat.
that play
Yeah.
on words, which is something that Tar would do, where she would take the letters in
Right.
someone's name and make it spell something new. They
Right.
played that trick on her with the title of her book.
Right. And
It's
and you
a
see
great
this.
metaphor for this movie, the Rorschach test, where something can literally
Yes.
be seen and like, okay, is this real or is this not real? Is it interpreted negatively or just, yeah,
Yeah, no,
wild?
absolutely. Yeah. And then again, we see those symbols there. So I feel like there's a lot of ties into that. Second viewing, third viewing, I think we will probably understand a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at the end of it, the crux of it all, it really is a person who is really just struggling, trying to really find themselves and where they really want to be versus who are they perceived to be. And again, I think that whole coming home moment is a great revelation about that. I'm assuming that's her brother, right, that she meets in the
Yeah.
house.
He says
And
sister at some point, something like that, or
right,
she calls him brother. Yeah.
the fact that he calls her Linda, and he's like, oh, I forgot, you don't go by that name anymore, or whatever the case is, because her name is Lydia. So someone who has kind of created this, I guess, persona of herself, but is this really her true self? Is this really what she wants to do? Is this really who she wants other people to see her as? Then she pops in that old tape of an old performance from TV that she
And,
recorded. I
yeah.
believe who was the conductor in that one? A very
Uh,
famous
I,
conductor, I believe.
yeah, it's Leonard Bernstein who was
That's
her
it. Yeah.
mentor in real
Right.
life, and he's giving
Hmm.
a what is the meaning of music?
Right.
It has, yeah, it was a clever thing to throw on in there, and also quick reference: Bradley Cooper is doing the Leonard Bernstein movie as his follow up to Star is
Right.
Born.
Right.
Really curious about that, and
Hmm.
there, yeah, I'm excited to learn more about Leonard Bernstein, but Yeah, that's my understanding. Is that was a an instructional movie from him for the
Hmm.
meaning of music and the
Meaning of
power of
music,
it,
right?
and I'm sure that was very important to her at some point in her life.
You're right. And I guess she, in a way, by watching that, she kind of, it stirs something emotional and meaningful in her again, because maybe she lost that. Maybe she lost that whole, why did I do all of this to begin with? Was it for the popularity, the fame, whatever the case is, or was it for the love of music, right? Then, thus moves forward
She's
where
wearing in that moment. She is wearing one of her trophies, which I'm sure
right,
is
yeah,
just
the
like
little
a
medal,
I'm a
yeah,
award-winning composer, eighth
right,
grade, whatever. She's
right,
literally, and it's one of those things. If you don't know where you came from, going to your childhood home,
yeah,
watching that documentary, and wearing the. It's pretty immature, right? It's
hmm,
lovely. She has this memory of winning a thing, and she's wearing it though, as if
yeah,
it's significant at all compared to her other things, and she's having a recollection where she's having to consolidate with the past.
right,
And of course, she's going to be in a bad way at that point.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, very, very meaningful and very touching and very sad. And it leads on to kind of how the movie ends as well, which is also kind of sad in a way too. The one great thing that Cate Blanchett said during the Q&A session, and this I promise this will be the last time I bring up that whole thing, um, that she said,
Damn it.
you know, it's very easy to watch this movie and see it as someone who is basically breaking down in front of your eyes, someone who's getting stripped of all of these things, someone who's just losing herself, like her psyche and all that. But when the ending comes around, I see this movie as a form of someone who's finally facing humility. You know, someone
Hmm.
who's like going
Hmm.
back and like really
Hmm.
like who lost themselves along the way, gets, you know, their up and comings or whatever the case is, and now goes through that humility process. Because as any conductor is known for, once you are conducting highly intense and very well recognized orchestras all throughout the world and all that, to get reduced to moving to Asia, the Philippines, mind you. I recognize the language because, you know, again,
Thank you.
that is my family.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Helpful.
Um, yeah, but ending up going to the Philippines to conduct basically a video game orchestra where it is an homage to Monster Hunter. That's why you see everyone in the audience in costume and cosplay and stuff like that. And they're not there for her. They're there for the music because they love the fandom of the video
Hmm.
game. They love the fandom of the music. So now she finds herself where she was performing because people wanted to see her perform. And now she's got reduced to performing in front of an audience who has no interest in who the hell she is. They're there mainly for the music. And that's basically how the movie ends, and it's very, very tragic. But again, going back to what Kate said, it is humility, right? And seeing that person go through that, and you know, it is a very, very sad ending. But you know, for someone who is trying to realize or reconnect with the reasons why she does all of this stuff in the first place, maybe she does need to start from scratch in order to pick herself back up again. I don't know.
Yeah. There's something. There's a line where at some point she says, "A musician's only home is the podium,"
Hmm.
and there is something. It's another one of those that can be interpreted a couple ways, but I'm thinking of one. She is so singularly focused that she disregards all aspects of human dignity, decency, the people in her life, loved ones, etc. Um, and it's as if everything it's okay for me to use people because that's good for me and that's good for the music or something like that. So
Hmm.
it's essentially a cautionary tale against being so singularly minded. But it's also on the note of you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going,
Right.
and the ending of her finding humility, that's lovely, Cate Blanchett. That is so much more optimistic than I felt at the end of it. Because like, okay, it's not just them getting justice and suffering, and now they're gonna be a
Yeah.
jerk in a worse situation and where's rock bottom. It would be lovely if that character just says, okay, I'm gonna be decent now.
Mhm.
I've learned my lesson, I'll suffer and I'll take it on the chin. That sounds like if she plateaus, that's way better than a few other alternatives.
Right.
And if she's decent to people, etc. Afterward, I would love a sequel 10 years from now. I'm sure it's not the kind of movie we get a sequel, but I want to know where do things go next.
Tar 2.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh,
Tar
that's so
harder.
funny. Thank you. I was looking for one of those. The I think as far as the meaning of the movie, and this might be a little more cynical than Kate's take.
Hmm.
There's that symbol we kept mentioning, and we don't know what it means. My feeling is it's essentially the truth will find you out. Your past will catch up with you. And
Hmm.
these are things where she's looking for something or is given something, and something kind of haunts her, appears to her, and she's confused, disoriented by it, etc. And there are ways in which this movie, we're talking about it, is the woman screaming in the park, is that just her subconscious? Is the dog chasing her just her subconscious, etc.? And I think that at the very least, there on second, third, fourth rewatch, there might be a whole another opinion on this. Was actually a Rorschach, and I think the
Yeah.
director is now saying the opposite about cancel culture or something. But the humility take, I really like that. I'm so glad you were at that Q&A. It doesn't bother me one bit whatsoever. Um, but yeah, the to me the ending felt properly tragic, and it felt like
Yeah.
you will suffer the consequences of your actions, especially if you're so singularly focused, self-centered, megalomaniac, narcissistic, etc.
Hmm.
I There are parts where I really loved the character, to be
Oh yeah.
perfectly frank. She's so
Yeah.
intelligent and so gifted at her
Hmm.
craft. And even when she's mean, there's something where it's like, okay, that's the person you want to be friends with at the dinner party when the debate
Sure.
happens about is Mahler better than what. Unbelievably sharp and in both ways, like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I'm glad we talked about it. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Of course.
I know better how. At least we've got like a little more. It's not just pure evil. I would caution people. The question, it's one of those, if you do you recommend it, and it's almost like the opposite of Blonde in some ways, where they
Hmm.
show in Blonde they show the victim and they keep showing that. In this one, it's a movie that's obsessed with the downfall and
Right.
the
The
the iniquities
consequences.
of this woman and the consequences of that. It
Yeah.
essentially does the opposite of Blonde. It shows the greatness of them and the horrible perpetratings that they
Hmm.
are doing. Um, it, I think I recommend it to anyone who loves movies. Also, in case you're curious about this kind of thing, there is one person in the row behind me who seemed to get every music reference whatsoever, and they would
Wow.
always have a knowing little laugh. And I'm like, you must be first violin at Met Opera. Like, we're
Right.
right
Right.
next
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
And
Your
everything, and they
your
would see
first seat.
words. Yeah, I was in like middle school orchestra. I actually enjoy classical music. I listen to it a fair bit. I don't know
Hmm.
what a lot of the lingo is. So there's a few times they're using words, and I'm like, maybe I could look that up later, but I'm not sure how to spell it. This dude just
Yeah.
going, nice. Oh, they mentioned that guy the whole time. So if you're curious if this the legitimacy of this movie, is it legit? Does it do right by
Yeah.
classical music culture? I have to assume it did based on this guy's little asides throughout the movie. Um, so damn well done. I don't know if I can recommend it to anyone. I don't know if I'll even have the stomach to rewatch it anytime soon. We'll
Mm.
see. But essentially, as high marks you can get on craft, and then
Hmm.
the story and the narrative. I'm glad we got to talk through it. I feel better now, at least.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. I mean, I would recommend this movie, especially if you just want to see a masterclass in acting.
Yeah,
Because again, Kate, like this movie would not have been as impactful if it wasn't for her performance. I mean, the fact that, like you said it, there are moments of the character that you actually enjoyed, and it takes a good performance to kind of make you like someone who is basically unlikable. Especially once you get to learn more about their character and the way they treat people and stuff like that. Um, Subject matters and messages aside and all that. I mean, I think this could trigger some people differently, depending on their experiences and all that stuff like that. It definitely speaks a lot on today's society, and I know we've said that a lot with like Triangle of Sadness specifically recently. And it's very interesting that two movies that are taken from different points of views and different walks of life and all that can basically have the same type of messaging within them coming out at the same time. Well, it kind of speaks to the environment, for sure.
yeah.
What were
And
you going to say?
if I may, I was mentioning before we started talking the movies where they have a similar woman abusing power
Yeah.
plot line. I didn't realize it was Cate Blanchett. I'm just going through because I was thinking like, can we throw up a quick top five Cate Blanchetts? Because her, but it's just unbelievable how many amazing performances
Oh my
there
God,
are.
it's too many. Yeah.
But the one I mentioned before is Notes on a Scandal. I didn't realize it was a Cate Blanchett, Judy Dench movie. It's from
Ah.
'06. I'm sure I knew it at the time, but I just
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
forgotten. it's literally a veteran high school teacher, Judy Dench, befriends a younger art teacher, off Kate, got to be Cate Blanchett, and who was having an affair with one of her 15-year-old students.
Ah, okay.
Cate Blanchett is really good at threading that needle of how are you going to pull off someone in that mindset. This shouldn't
Yeah.
be possible for a human to put themselves there with. Goodness gracious. And then my other, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. Put Woody Allen's name fully aside because Cate Blanchett delivers such a powerhouse performance in Blue Jasmine.
Yeah.
If you're into that
Oh
kind of
yeah.
thing, go see it as soon
Yeah.
as you possibly can, for sure.
Yeah. No, there's a reason why there was a lot of attention about her performance when that movie came out. I mean, that movie, wow. Yeah. And I think we're getting the same thing here too.
Yep.
I said that in my review. I said the first thing I said was, mark my words, come Oscar time, not only will she be nominated, I think she is going to win the Best Actress category because of this performance. Now I know we're only in October, and I know there's a lot of movies still yet to come out, but based off
It feels like
all
a
the
safe bet
performance,
right now.
yeah, because
Yeah.
like the only other performance I would like kind of put close there would be Michelle Yeoh's performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So who knows? They
Yeah.
they both could be neck and neck by this time. Oscar time is here. So again, there's a lot of other things coming out still for the rest of the year, but I think it's a surefire bet that she would be definitely nominated. But I do think she could win for sure. But yeah, like if and we'll do final words right now of like what our final thoughts. I would do recommend this again if you want to see brilliant performing, brilliant directing, amazing technical achievements throughout this movie, like sound design, all that stuff like that. And I think it is a story worth living through and watching. Again, it depends on how you're gonna react, how you're gonna get triggered based on like certain things that are brought up. But at the end of the day, it is a very an interesting case study of someone's psyche and someone who goes through all of these different roller coaster of events and emotions. Really, just at the end of the day, to try to figure out who they are and trying to figure out who they want to be moving forward because of everything. But yeah, very very fascinating movie. What about you, Blake?
I mean, overall, as far as if we're doing closing thoughts,
Yeah.
I'm excited. We're getting closer to Oscar time, and
Oh
so
yeah.
it's starting to become the time. It's kind of like we can listen to. I'm playing my Halloween costume a little bit. Spooky season.
Mm-hmm.
We're staying indoors a little more, and I'm getting that. You smell the fall air, and you go, "Is it Oscar season today?" No, not yet, but we can start listening to Oscar season music or podcasts or whatever. I think it's about time. I feel comfortable saying I would be shocked if she's not going to be a nominee. I think you're talking Michelle Yeoh, Viola Davis. There's a couple that either haven't come out yet, Fablemans or Daniel Deadwire is when people are listing favorites. Ana de Armas we talked about recently and a little
Mm-hmm.
bit tonight with Blonde. There are going to be a few others for sure that we could do a little horse racing and just people going in and out with a performance this massive, with a script this, and with Cate Blanchett. I would be shocked if this isn't the exact kind of movie. It would almost be someone would have to spike the ball on blowing it all up in a Q&A or something like
Right.
that, or saying like the worst thing, like to where people are like, we can no longer, like if Cate Blanchett gets canceled Tar style, like
Oh my
maybe
God.
not. But other than that, she's probably not, right? Like,
No.
Kate's good.
No,
I'm
I'll tell you
sure.
this, like I do follow stuff on Twitter with Kate. Especially when I saw the Q&A and all that, like a lot of people loved my tweets and my photos and all that stuff from there was a recent thing, and
Stop. Damn it.
I wouldn't call this a controversy, but she was photographed and it was very clear that she was hiding a cigarette. So I think people didn't realize that she smoked, but she was posing like really trying her best to hide the cigarette, and that was like the biggest controversy for like 3 days. So like, why are you hiding the fact that you're smoking, Kate? That's like,
Could I wasn't ready to fall in love again. I with Cate Blanchett. Are you kidding me? Every movie
yeah.
and her character in Don't Look Up last year was
Yeah, yeah,
just.
yeah,
Are you
yeah.
kidding me?
Oh my
What a
God.
delightful person. Basically the same as Tar, same as Thor character, same as when she played Bob Dylan. How is someone so? And my understanding, she's pretty private in her life. Like it's just
Yes. Yeah, that is
cool
true.
and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
just. I would be shocked if we saw much other than an Oscar speech from Cate Blanchett in the next upcoming months of like personal drama, something.
Yeah. No, I feel
So
like
nice to have a legend while we're here. Like,
oh
God
yeah,
bless it.
Kate is, I feel like, is one of those people that I think we would get along with very well because, again, very private. I've heard she's also very awkward at times, and she can be very goofy.
Kate, if
I
you're
feel like
listening, we would love to have you as our inaugural
yes,
interview with Movie Time.
please.
I promise I will be respectful, and I'm sure Renee won't. But
Oh,
I'm sure he'll
well,
mention New York Film Festival at least 17 times or so.
yeah, I will definitely do that. And
Do you remember seeing me there, Kate? That would be your
yeah,
first question.
I was in the second row.
Second row? God, dude, stop! You're trying to slip him in casually. It's killing me.
I can't help it. I'm sorry, but anyways, yeah, no, this was this again, great movie, great performance all around. Definitely want to hear all of your thoughts about it. So let us know. I know by the time this comes out, it should be available more nationwide. I think there's a slower rollout process internationally. So if you had a chance to see it, let us know in the comments your thoughts. Let us know if there was anything that maybe we have missed that we weren't able to really analyze. Let us know your thoughts on some of the symbolisms and little hidden messages all throughout, especially during like the dream sequences and the little like did this happen, did this not. Would love to hear your thoughts about it. If you haven't seen it yet, are you planning to watch it based off of maybe what we said? Let us know everything in the comments. Again, great thing that we love to do is engage with all of you out there. So comment. It is very important. We love having those conversations. So with that being said, this has been Movie Time for this week. Before we really close things out, Blake, where can people find you online?
You can find me improvising a top 5 Cate Blanchette movies list. Okay, here we go. Blue Jasmine, Tar, Don't Look Back, where she plays Bob Dylan, Carol, and I'm going to go ahead and go with, I haven't seen Elizabeth, sorry, Ocean's 8. Hell yeah.
Nightmare Alley.
And on Letterboxd,
Nightmare Alley.
What? No. Let's.
Oh, come on.
We got to do a whole nother Cate thing. Oh, man. Okay, yeah, I'll refocus. I'm on Letterboxd under the name Blake Wolf SSN, and that's where you'll see me having given Tar a very disoriented 5 stars.
Nice. Very, very nice.
Out of 5.
Yeah, so as I work with Blake on this top 10 Cate Blanchett movie list, and I think Nightmare Alley should definitely be up on there. As
Life
well
Aquatic,
as Lord of the Rings.
That's my 5 spot, not Ocean's
Life
8.
Aquatic is great. Yes,
Babel.
Life Aquatic is great.
The Aviator. How does this list keep going?
There's too
Curious
many.
Case of Benjamin Buddies. Are you kidding me?
All right.
Thor Ragnarok for sure.
Before we go on for like another 30 minutes.
I'm just going to keep listing movies. Go ahead.
You could find me on all the handles on the screen you see in front of you. Lowkey Geek on Twitter, Instagram, of course, here on Facebook. If you are brand new to this channel and you haven't done so already, hit the like, subscribe buttons, notification bell. Show your love and support. It doesn't cost you a single thing. We definitely appreciate comment. If you want an audio version of this episode, you could go search Lowkey Geek on your podcast platform of choice, where you can download this episode and many more there. As we wrap things up and as Blake continues to look through the list of Cate Blanchett
Manifesto
movies,
is the last one I have to mention. Yep. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sleep for weeks.
As I kind of slowly mute him, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all the love and support. Until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. I've been Rene. This has been Blake. This has been Movie Time. We'll catch you all next time. Peace out, y'all.